I still remember the way our house smelled at night. Vanilla and something warm, cinnamon, maybe. My mom baked when she couldn't sleep, and she almost never slept. The kitchen light would spill into the hallway, and I'd lie in bed pretending I was asleep, waiting for her footsteps. Quick confession. You keep watching our savage revenge stories, but half of you still haven't subscribed. Let's fix that. It's free, it helps us grow, and today's story is one you don't want to miss. Thank you. Ethan, she'd whisper. I'd sit up instantly. Yeah. Come here. I made something. It didn't matter what it was. Cookies, pie, sometimes just burnt toast with too much sugar. I'd sit on the counter, legs swinging, while she leaned against the sink like the world hadn't already started taking pieces of her. You're growing too fast, she'd say, brushing crumbs off my shirt. I'm 8, I'd remind her. Exactly. Yesterday you were 5. That's not how time works. She'd smile at that, soft, tired, real. My dad was usually in the living room, the TV casting blue light across his face. News, always news. He didn't laugh much, didn't talk much either. But he wasn't a bad man back then. Just distant, like someone watching life instead of living it. Don't stay up too late, he'd say without looking at us. Mom would roll her eyes behind his back and whisper, "Rebel." I'd grin like we were partners in some secret war. Those nights felt safe, small, like nothing outside those walls could touch us. Weekends were different. Dad would mow the lawn in perfect straight lines, like the grass had personally offended him. Mom would sit on the porch with a book she barely read, watching me ride my bike in circles. Careful, she'd call out every 5 seconds. I'm fine, I'd yell back, wobbling dangerously just to prove I wasn't. She never believed me. One time I fell hard, scraped my knee, blood running down my shin. I tried not to cry because Dad was watching, and crying felt like failing some test I didn't understand. But Mom rushed over anyway. Oh my God, Ethan. Hey, it's okay. I'm not crying, I said, even as my voice cracked. I know, she whispered, pulling me close. You're just leaking a little. I laughed through the pain, and she kissed the top of my head like that fixed everything. And somehow it did. At night, she'd sit on the edge of my bed until I fell asleep. Sometimes she told stories, made up ones about brave kids and monsters that always lost. Why do they always win? I asked once, half asleep. Because they keep going, she said, even when it's hard. What if they stop? She paused. I remember that. They won't, she said finally. Not my kind of heroes. I believed her. God, I believed everything she said. Looking back now, I can see the cracks I missed. The way she held her side sometimes when she thought no one was looking. The way Dad avoided her eyes more and more. The quiet arguments behind closed doors. Sharp whispers that cut through the walls at night. You need to tell him, Dad said once. He's a child, Mom replied. He's your son. He's our son. Silence after that. I remember standing in the hallway, heart pounding, not understanding but knowing something was wrong. The next morning, everything was normal again. Pancakes, smiles, Dad reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. That was the thing about our family. We were really good at pretending. If you asked me back then, I would have said I had a good life. A loving mom, a father who provided, a house that felt like home. And maybe that's what makes what happened next so much worse. Because I didn't see it coming. Not the loss. Not the silence that followed. Not the people we would become after she was gone. If I had known, if I had even the smallest warning, I would have stayed awake longer that night. I would have listened harder. I would have told her not to go to sleep. But I didn't. I just closed my eyes, believing morning would come the same way it always had. I was wrong. The house didn't smell like cinnamon anymore. It smelled like nothing. Not in a clean way, just empty. Like someone had opened all the windows and let the life leak out. The kitchen was cold. The oven stayed off. and the hallway felt longer somehow, like it had stretched overnight. I stood in the doorway of my room, waiting. For footsteps. For her voice. For anything. Nothing came. Ethan. My dad's voice sounded different. Flat. Like it had been scraped clean of everything human. I turned slowly. "Where's Mom?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me like he was trying to remember something important and couldn't quite reach it. "We're going out," he said. "That's not what I asked." His jaw tightened. "Get dressed." I didn't argue. I don't know why. Maybe because the silence in the house felt heavier than anything he could say. The drive was quiet. No music. No radio. Just the sound of the engine and my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. "Dad." I tried again. "Where are we going?" He gripped the steering wheel harder. "You'll see." I hated that answer. We pulled into a parking lot filled with cars. Too many cars. People dressed in black moved slowly toward a building I didn't recognize. A church. I frowned. "Why are we here?" He finally looked at me. And for a second, just a second, I saw something crack in his eyes. "She's gone, Ethan." I blinked. "What?" "Your mother," he said, each word like it hurt to say. "She passed away last night." I waited for the rest of the sentence. There had to be more. "She's at the hospital?" I asked. "We can go see her, right?" He shook his head. "No, no." I laughed a little, confused. "What do you mean no?" "She's gone." "That doesn't make sense," I said, my voice rising. "People don't just go." "She was fine. She made cookies. She said," my throat closed. "She said I was her hero," I whispered. He didn't respond. Didn't comfort me. Didn't even look at me anymore. He just opened the car door and stepped out. "Come on." I didn't move. If I stayed in that seat, maybe none of it would be real. Maybe this was some kind of mistake. A bad dream I hadn't woken up from yet. "Ethan." His voice was sharper now. I stepped out. The air felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. Inside, everything blurred together. People I didn't know, faces that looked sad in a practiced way. They touched my shoulder, said things like, "I'm so sorry," and "She was wonderful." I wanted to scream at them. You didn't know her. You didn't hear her laugh at midnight or watch her burn toast and pretend it was on purpose. You don't get to be sad. But I didn't say anything. I just stood there, numb, as my dad guided me toward the front. And then I saw it. The casket. White. Polished. Too perfect. "No," I said under my breath. My dad's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Ethan." "No," I repeated louder this time. "She's not in there." People turned to look. "She's not in there," I said again, my voice shaking now. "She's at home. She's probably baking or something. This is wrong." "Ethan," my dad said, low in warning. "I want to go home." No answer. I said I want to go home. My voice cracked through the room, raw and desperate. For a moment, everything stopped. Then someone, an older woman I didn't recognize, knelt in front of me. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "your mother is with God now." I stared at her. "I don't care," I said. Her expression faltered. "I want my mom." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. My dad exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath this entire time. "Go sit down," he muttered. That was it. No hug. "No, I'm sorry. Just sit down." So I did. 'Cause I didn't know what else to do. The service passed in pieces I couldn't hold on to. Words about love and loss. About peace. About how she was in a better place. I hated every second of it. Better place? She belonged with me. At some point, people started crying. I didn't. Not then. I just sat there, staring at that box, waiting for it to open. Waiting for her to sit up and laugh and tell everyone this was some kind of stupid mistake. She didn't. Afterward, people gathered around us again. More hands. More empty words. You're the man of the house now, someone told me. I was 8. I didn't want to be the man of anything. I wanted my mom. That night, the house felt even emptier than before. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar creak of the floorboards, the soft whisper. Ethan. Nothing. Hours passed. Still nothing. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't coming back. Not tomorrow. Not ever. The sound that came out of me didn't feel human. It was raw, broken, something tearing itself apart from the inside. I buried my face in the pillow so my dad wouldn't hear. Not because I thought he'd comfort me, but because I knew he wouldn't. And somehow, that hurt almost as much. That was the night everything changed. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic lightning strike moment. But quietly, like the house losing its smell. Like the warmth fading from the walls. Like a boy realizing for the first time that he was completely alone. It happened faster than it should have. Looking back, that's the part that bothers me the most. Not that my dad remarried, but how quickly he replaced her. It had been, 6 months? Maybe less. Time didn't mean much back then. Days blurred together into silence and routine. School, home, eat, sleep, repeat. No late night baking. No stories. No whispered good nights. Just existence. So when my dad said, "We're having dinner with someone tonight," I didn't think much of it. "Someone from work?" I asked, tying my shoes. He hesitated. Something like that. That should have been my first warning. We drove to a restaurant I'd never been to before. Too nice. Too quiet. The kind of place where people spoke in low voices like they were afraid of being heard. She was already there. Sitting straight, hands folded, smiling like she'd been waiting her whole life for that moment. "Ethan," my dad said, clearing his throat. "This is Lillian." She stood up immediately. "Oh my God," she said softly, placing a hand over her chest. "You're even cuter than he said." I froze. I didn't like being looked at like that, like I was something to be evaluated. "Hi," I muttered. She knelt down to my level, her smile warm, almost rehearsed. "I've heard so much about you." I glanced at my dad. He looked uncomfortable. That was new. "Have you?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "Your father talks about you all the time." That was a lie. I knew it instantly. My dad barely talked to me, let alone about me. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and slid into my seat. Dinner felt strange. Lillian did most of the talking. About her job, her hobbies, how much she loved kids. She laughed at my dad's dry comments like they were the funniest things in the world. And every now and then, she'd look at me. Not in a mean way. Just observing. Like she was studying me. "So, Ethan," she said at one point, "what do you like to do for fun?" I shrugged. "Ride my bike." "That's it." I shrugged again. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll have to fix that." The word sat wrong in my chest. After dinner, my dad asked if I wanted dessert. I shook my head. "I'm tired." That wasn't true. I just wanted to leave. Lillian leaned in slightly. "Maybe next time." Next time. I didn't like the sound of that either. She started coming over a lot after that. First, it was just dinners. Then weekends. Then, she stopped leaving. It wasn't official. Not yet. But she was there. In the kitchen. In the living room. In my mom's space. "Do you like pancakes?" she asked one morning, flipping 1-2 perfectly in the pan. I stood in the doorway, unsure what to say. "My mom used to make them," I replied. She paused for just a second, then smiled again. "Well, I hope mine are just as good." They weren't. But I ate them anyway. Because she was trying. That's what I told myself. She was trying. And for a while, she really was. She helped me with homework, packed my lunches, Came to a school event once and clapped louder than anyone else when my name was called. See, she said afterward, squeezing my shoulder. I'm your biggest fan. I almost believed her. Almost. The house started to feel alive again. Different, but not empty. There were smells in the kitchen again. Music sometimes. Laughter, hers mostly. Even my dad seemed lighter, like something heavy had been lifted off him. One night I heard them talking in the living room. You should tell him, Lillian said gently. Not yet, my dad replied. He deserves to know. I'll handle it. Silence. Then softer. I just want to be a family. That word again. Family. It used to mean something. Now it felt like something being rebuilt without asking me. A few days later, my dad sat me down. Lillian stood behind him, hands clasped, watching. Ethan, he began. Lillian and we've been seeing each other for a while. I said nothing. We're getting married. Just like that. No build-up. No question. A statement. I looked at Lillian. She smiled wide, hopeful. Is that okay? She asked softly. I didn't know how to answer that. Was it okay? No. But did it matter? Also no. So I nodded. Yeah, I said quietly. Her smile grew brighter. Oh, Ethan, she said, pulling me into a hug before I could react. I promise, I'll take such good care of you. Her arms wrapped around me, warm and tight. Too tight. I stood there, stiff, not hugging back. Something in my chest shifted. Not pain. Not yet. Just discomfort. Like a puzzle piece being forced into the wrong place. I've always wanted a son, she whispered. The words sent a strange chill down my spine. I didn't understand why. Not then. If I had, maybe I would have pulled away sooner. Maybe I would have seen what was coming. But I didn't. I just stood there, trapped in her embrace, listening to her promises. Promises that would rot from the inside out. Promises that would turn into something else entirely. Something colder. Something cruel. And by the time I realized the truth, it was already too late. First, nothing changed. That's what made it so confusing. After the wedding, Lillian was the same. Warm, attentive, almost overly perfect. If anything, she tried harder. Eat your vegetables, Ethan, she'd say with a playful smile. He hates broccoli, my dad would mutter from the table. Oh, we'll fix that, she'd reply, placing an extra spoonful on my plate. It wasn't mean. Not really. Just firm. Structured. Controlled. The house had rules now. New ones. Dinner at exactly 6. No excuses. Homework done before anything else. Lights out at 9 no matter what. Routine builds character, she'd say. My dad didn't argue. He barely spoke at all anymore. But I adjusted. What choice did I have? And for a while, it worked. We became something that looked like a family. From the outside, everything was perfect. Inside, something was quietly shifting. Started small. It always does. One night, I left my backpack on the couch. Something I'd done 100 times before. Lillian noticed. Ethan, she called from the kitchen, her tone calm. What did we talk about? I glanced at the bag. I'll move it. Now. I walked over, slinging it over my shoulder. Thank you, she said, smiling. But her eyes didn't soften. Not like they used to. Then came the comments. Little things. You're getting sloppy. You used to be so responsible. Your mother wouldn't like this. That one hit harder than the rest. I froze. What? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. I'm just saying. She raised you better than this. Something twisted in my chest. Don't talk about her, I said quietly. Her smile stayed in place. I'm trying to help you, Ethan. It didn't feel like help. The real change came the day she told us she was pregnant. She was glowing, practically radiating excitement. My dad looked proud. It was the first time I'd seen that expression on his face in a long time. "We're going to have a baby," she said, her voice full of something I couldn't quite name. Joy, possession, victory. I forced a smile. "That's cool." She laughed lightly. "Cool? That's all I get. I don't know what else to say." "Try 'I'm excited,'" she suggested. I hesitated. "I'm excited." She studied me for a second longer than necessary, then nodded. "Good." After that, I started disappearing. Not physically, not yet, but in every other way. Lillian's attention shifted completely. Everything became about the baby, the nursery, the doctor visits, the future, and I became background noise. "Ethan, can you keep it down? Ethan, don't touch that. Ethan, you're being too loud." I wasn't doing anything different. But suddenly, everything I did was wrong. The baby was born on a rainy afternoon. I remember because the sky matched the way the house felt. Heavy, gray, quiet. "It's a boy," my dad said when he came home from the hospital. His voice carried something new, something I'd never heard before. Excitement. Real excitement. "What's his name?" I asked. "Caleb." Of course it was. Strong. Simple. Perfect. "Can I see him?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not today." Oh. When they finally brought him home, everything changed overnight. Lillian hovered over him constantly. Every cry, every movement, it was like the world stopped. "He's perfect," she whispered again and again. And he was small, fragile, innocent. I stood in the doorway watching, waiting for her to look at me the same way. She didn't. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the distance grew. "Don't wake him," she snapped one afternoon when I accidentally shut a door too hard. "Sorry," I said quickly. "You need to be more careful," she added, her tone sharp now. I said I'm sorry. She sighed, shaking her head. "Sometimes I wonder what goes on in that head of yours." I clenched my fists. "Nothing," I muttered. "What was that?" "Nothing." Food changed too. Not the meals, just portions. Caleb got the best of everything. Fresh, soft, perfect. I got whatever was left. "Is this all?" I asked one night, staring at my plate. "That's plenty," she replied without looking at me. "I'm still hungry." She finally turned, her expression cold. "Then you should have thought about that before wasting food yesterday." I hadn't wasted anything. But I didn't argue. I just ate slower. Pretended it was enough. The first time she truly crossed the line, I remember it clearly. I came home from school, tired, hungry. I opened the fridge. Empty. Except for a small container labeled Caleb. I closed it immediately. Lillian walked in. "Looking for something?" "There's nothing to eat." "There is," she said, nodding toward the cabinet. "Crackers." "That's it." She shrugged. "We're low on groceries. But there's food for him." Her expression hardened instantly. "He's a baby. I'm hungry too. And you're old enough to understand priorities." The words hit like a slap. "I'm your son too," I said before I could stop myself. Silence. Heavy, dangerous silence. Then she smiled. Slow, cold. "No," she said softly. "You're not." Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a small fracture. The kind that spreads over time. I stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. "Close the fridge," she added calmly. "You're letting the cold air out." I did, 'cause I didn't know what else to do. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again, just like before. But this time, I wasn't waiting for footsteps. I knew they wouldn't come. Instead, I listened to the faint sound of Caleb crying down the hall. And Lillian's voice, soft, gentle, full of love. A version of her I no longer recognized. A version that wasn't meant for me. That was the moment I understood something important. I wasn't part of this family anymore. I was just living in it. And whatever came next, I would face it alone. Caleb grew up fast. Faster than I expected. One day he was a crying bundle that took up all the oxygen in the house. And the next he was walking, talking, watching, always watching. At first he didn't understand anything. He'd smile when he saw me, reach out with those tiny hands like I was something safe. "Ethan," Lillian would say, "hold him for a second." I would, carefully. He'd grab my shirt, laugh for no reason, drool all over my shoulder. For a brief moment, it felt normal. Like maybe things could still work. Like maybe I could be a brother. But that didn't last. Kids learn fast, especially when someone is teaching them, even if they don't realize it. "Don't go near him," Lillian snapped once when Caleb waddled toward me. I wasn't doing anything. "He doesn't need your bad habits." I blinked. "What habits?" She didn't answer. She just picked him up, holding him close like I was something contagious. Caleb looked at me over her shoulder, confused, curious. Then slowly, he turned his face into her neck. That was the first time. The first time he chose her over me. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. By the time Caleb was 5, he understood everything. Not the full story, not the truth, but enough. Enough to know I wasn't like him. Enough to know I was less. "Why does he eat different food?" I heard him ask once. Lillian didn't lower her voice. "Because he doesn't behave the way you do." I stood in the hallway, frozen. "I behave good," Caleb said proudly. "I know you do," she replied, kissing his forehead. "That's why you get the best." Something twisted inside me. Again. Always that same feeling. Like something rotting just beneath the surface. It got worse when he started school. He came home with stories. Friends. Teachers who praised him. "Ms. Carter says I'm the smartest in class," he announced one afternoon, dropping his backpack. "That's my boy," my dad said, actually smiling. I sat at the table, quietly finishing my homework. "What about you, Ethan?" Lillian asked suddenly. I looked up. "What about me? How are your grades?" "They're fine." Fine isn't impressive. I clenched my jaw. "They're good." Caleb snorted. "Maybe if you tried harder," he said, mimicking her tone almost perfectly. I stared at him. He grinned. That was new. The first time he touched me, it wasn't an accident. We were in the backyard. I was fixing the loose chain on my bike, something I taught myself because no one else would help. Caleb walked over, kicking a ball lazily. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Fixing it." "You're doing it wrong." I didn't look up. "No, I'm not. My dad said you don't know how to do anything." That made me pause. I looked at him slowly. "What did you just say?" He shrugged, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You don't know how to do anything." Before I could respond, he kicked the ball. Hard. It hit the side of my head. I staggered slightly, more shocked than hurt. "Oops," he said. But there was no apology in his voice. Only amusement. "You did that on purpose." He shrugged again. "So?" I stood up. For a moment, just a moment, I thought about it. What would happen if I shoved him? If I pushed him back just as hard? If I showed him I wasn't someone he could mess with? But then I heard the back door open. "Caleb," Lillian's voice called. He instantly changed. "Mom!" he yelled, running toward her. "Ethan yelled at me." I froze. "That's not what happened." Lillian's eyes snapped to me, sharp and accusing. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said, my voice tight. "He hit me with the ball." It was an accident, Caleb said quickly, hiding behind her leg. He said it was on purpose. Ethan, she said, her tone dropping into that cold register I knew too well. Why do you always have to start something? I didn't start anything. Enough. One word. Final. She turned to Caleb, her voice instantly soft again. It's okay, sweetheart. Go inside. He glanced at me as he passed. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. That look. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Superiority. After that, it became a pattern. Small things. Constant. Relentless. He'd hide my things. Break them. Blame me. And every single time, she believed him. Ethan, why would you do that? I didn't. You need to take responsibility. I didn't do anything. Go to your room. Always the same. Always me. My dad? He stopped getting involved entirely. Just listen to your mother. He'd say without even looking up. Your mother. The words felt wrong every time. But I stopped correcting him. Because it didn't matter. Nothing I said mattered. School wasn't much better. I kept to myself. Did my work. Stayed out of trouble. But it followed me home. That constant pressure. That quiet, suffocating weight. Until one night, it snapped. I was in my room working on an assignment. Caleb burst in without knocking. Get out, I said immediately. This used to be my playroom, he replied, looking around like he owned it. It's my room now. He walked over to my desk, picking up my notebook. What's this? Put it down. He flipped through the pages, then laughed. This is stupid. Give it back. Or what? I stood up slowly. Caleb. Something in my voice must have shifted. Because for a second, just a second, he hesitated. Then he tore a page out. Right down the middle. My chest tightened. Stop. He tore another. And another. Each rip louder than the last. Stop, I shouted, grabbing his wrist. The room went still. We both froze. His eyes widened. Then, he screamed. Loud, sharp, immediate. Mom! Footsteps thundered down the hall. Lillian appeared in the doorway, eyes wild. What's going on? He grabbed me. Caleb cried, tears already streaming down his face. He hurt me. That's not Ethan. My name like a warning. I didn't hurt him. He was tearing my. Let go of him. I hadn't even realized I was still holding his wrist. I released it instantly. She pulled him close, checking him over like he'd been attacked. He's fine, I said, my voice shaking now. He's lying. Her gaze snapped to me. Cold. Sharp. Certain. I saw you, she said. You saw the end of it. That's enough. She stood, positioning herself between us. Like I was the threat. You will not touch him again. I didn't. Do you understand me? Silence stretched. Heavy. I nodded. Say it. I understand. Good. She turned, guiding Caleb out of the room. He looked back at me over her shoulder and smiled. A small, satisfied smile. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as my brother. He wasn't. He was something else. Something shaped by her. Something that would only get worse. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of it. Not even close. By the time I turned 16, I had learned one thing very clearly. Survival in that house meant silence. Don't argue. Don't react. Don't exist more than necessary. It didn't stop the damage. But it delayed it. Sometimes. I had a part-time job by then. Nothing fancy. Stocking shelves at a grocery store a few miles away. Late shifts. Minimum wage. But it was mine. My money. My independence. Or at least, that's what I thought. I kept my savings hidden. Cash mostly. Stuffed inside an old shoebox under my bed. tucked beneath worn-out notebooks and loose papers. Every dollar mattered, because deep down, I knew I'd need it. Where do you keep going every evening? Lillian's voice cut through the kitchen one night as I grabbed my jacket. Work. You didn't ask for permission. I paused. I told Dad. She crossed her arms. I'm asking you. I have a job, I said carefully. That's all. Caleb, now 13, leaned against the counter watching. Always watching. What kind of job? She pressed. Grocery store. She scoffed. How ambitious. I said nothing. Be home by 9, she added. My shift ends at 10. Then find another job. I need this one. Her eyes narrowed. For what? I hesitated. That was my mistake. For what, Ethan? She repeated, sharper now. Just stuff. Stuff? She echoed, unimpressed. Caleb smirked. Probably saving to run away, he said casually. The room went quiet. Lillian didn't laugh. She just looked at me. Long hard. Like she was filing that idea away for later. Don't be ridiculous, she said finally. But her tone said something else entirely. I should have moved the money. I know that now. But back then, I thought hiding it was enough. I thought I was careful. I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I had a math test that day. Didn't matter. None of it mattered after what I walked into. My room was open. That never happened. The door was always closed. Always. I felt it immediately. That shift in the air. Like something had been disturbed. I stepped inside slowly. Drawers open. Closet half emptied. My desk cleared. My chest tightened. No, I whispered. I dropped to my knees, yanking the shoebox out from under the bed. Empty. Completely empty. My hands started shaking. No, no, no. I searched anyway. Threw things aside. Papers, clothes, everything. Gone. All of it. Months of work. Months of planning. Gone. Looking for something? Her voice. Calm. Controlled. I turned slowly. Lillian stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Caleb behind her. Watching. Of course he was. You took it, I said. Not a question. A fact. Her expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. My money, I snapped, standing up. You took it. She raised an eyebrow. Watch your tone. Give it back. Caleb let out a small laugh. That was all it took. You think this is funny? I shot at him. Ethan, Lillian said, her voice dropping dangerously low. You're making accusations without proof. My room was searched. I was cleaning. You went through my things. I am your parent, she said sharply. I don't need your permission. That was my money. What money? She asked coolly. I stared at her. You're really going to do this? She stepped closer. You mean the money you've been hiding? My stomach dropped. There was no reason for you to hide anything, she continued, unless you were planning something. I was saving. For what? She demanded. I didn't answer, because I knew. The moment I said it out loud, it would become real. Exactly, she said softly. Suspicious. That doesn't make it yours. Her smile returned. Cold. Measured. It's gone. 3 words. Simple. Final. Something inside me snapped. You stole from me. Caleb laughed again, louder this time. Shut up, I yelled, turning toward him. Ethan. That voice. My dad. He stood behind them now, just inside the hallway. I hadn't even heard him come in. Tell her to give it back, I said immediately. She took my money. He looked between us. Tired. Annoyed. What money? I let out a breath, trying to steady myself. I've been working. Saving. It was under my bed. It's gone. Silence. Then, why were you hiding money? He asked. I blinked. What? Answer the question. I just, you don't trust us. Lillian cut in smoothly. That's not. You're living under our roof, she continued, her tone suddenly wounded. Eating our food. And you're hiding things? I wasn't hiding anything. It was mine. Ethan, my dad said, his voice hardening now, you need to calm down. Calm down. I laughed, the sound sharp and broken. She stole from me. Enough. One word. Just like before. Only this time, it felt heavier. More final. You don't speak to her like that, he added. I stared at him. You're serious right now? You will apologize. For a second, couldn't breathe. Apologize, I repeated. Yes. To her. Yes. I looked at Lillian, Caleb, at the way they stood there, waiting, expecting, like this was normal, like this was right. Something inside me went cold. I'm not apologizing, I said quietly. The room went still. My dad's expression changed. Disappointment, then anger. Then you can leave. The words hit harder than anything else. What? You heard me, he said. If you can't respect this house, you don't belong in it. Silence. Heavy. Unreal. You're kicking me out? I asked. You're choosing this. No, I said, shaking my head. No, I'm not. This is insane. Pack your things. Lillian didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She'd already won. I stood there for a long moment, waiting, hoping, for him to take it back, for something to change. Didn't. So I nodded. Slowly. Okay, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it didn't belong to me. I turned, grabbed a bag, and started packing. Not much to take. Clothes, a few books. That was it. Everything else didn't matter anymore. When I walked out of that house, no one stopped me. Not my dad. Not Lillian. Not Caleb. The door closed behind me with a soft click. And just like that, I wasn't part of that family anymore. Not even in name. I stood on the sidewalk, bags slung over my shoulder, the night air cold against my skin. No plan. No money. No one. Just gone. And that's when it hit me. Not the pain. Not the anger. Something else. Something deeper. Final. That was the night I stopped being their son. And the night I became something else entirely. The first night was the hardest. Not because I didn't know where to go, but because I did. And I hated it. I ended up behind the grocery store. The same one I worked at. There was a narrow alley, tucked between the building and a row of dumpsters. Not clean, not safe, but hidden. Good enough. I sat there with my bag pressed against my chest, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the occasional clang of metal from the loading dock. This is temporary, I told myself. Just for a few days. Just until I figure something out. I didn't sleep much. Every sound felt like a threat. Every shadow like something waiting to move. By morning, my body ached and my eyes burned. But I got up anyway, because I had a shift. You look like hell, Marcus said the second he saw me. Marcus was the assistant manager. Mid-30s, built like someone who used to care about the gym but didn't anymore. Didn't sleep, I muttered. He studied me for a second. You sick? No. You sure? Yeah. He didn't push. That's what I liked about him. He didn't ask questions he didn't want answers to. Stock aisle 3, he said, tossing me a box cutter. Got it. Work became everything. Not just because I needed the money, but because it gave me structure. Something predictable. Something that made sense. Boxes, shelves, labels. Simple. Controlled. Unlike everything else. I started taking extra shifts. Staying late. Coming in early. Trying to become employee of the month or something? Marcus joked one evening. Something like that. He nodded, leaning against the counter. You got somewhere to be after this? I hesitated. Yeah. Another mistake. He caught it instantly. You sure? Yeah. He didn't look convinced. But again, he didn't push. A week passed. Then two. The alley stopped feeling temporary. That scared me more than anything. It rained one night. Hard. Cold. Relentless. I sat there, soaked through, my bag clutched tight as water pooled around my shoes. This isn't working, I thought. This isn't sustainable. I needed something else. Something better. The next day, Marcus called me into the back. You're staying after your shift, he said. I frowned. Did I mess something up? No. Then why? Just stay. I waited. Nervous. Tired. Expecting the worst. When my shift ended, he handed me a key. I stared at it. What's this? Storage room, he said. I blinked. Why? He shrugged. You're here more than anyone else. Figured you might as well be comfortable. I looked at him. Really looked at him. You know, don't you? He didn't answer right away. Just sighed. I'm not stupid, kid. Something in my chest tightened. I didn't want. Yeah, I know, he cut in. Nobody does. Silence. Then, just don't make it a habit, he added. And keep it clean. I nodded quickly. Thank you. He waved it off. Yeah. Don't make me regret it. That room changed everything. It wasn't much. Concrete floor, metal shelves, a flickering light. But it was dry. Safe. Mine. For the first time since I left that house, I could breathe. I started thinking differently after that. Not about survival. About escape. Real escape. Because I knew something now. Something important. No one was coming to save me. No one was going to fix this. If I wanted a different life, I had to build it myself. I started paying attention. At work. To everything. Inventory systems. Orders. Pricing. How things moved. What sold. What didn't. Patterns. There were always patterns. Marcus noticed. You thinking of running this place someday? He joked. Something like that, I replied. He chuckled. Aim higher. I did. Nights became study sessions. Not school. Something else. I found old business books in a thrift store. Read them cover to cover. Didn't understand everything. Didn't need to. I picked up what mattered. How money moved. How people made it. How they lost it. And most importantly, how they took it from others. Months passed. Then a year. I turned 18 in that storage room. No cake. No candles. Just a quiet realization. I was still here. Still standing. And stronger than I had any right to be. One night, as I counted my savings, real savings this time, hidden better, smarter, I thought about them. Lillian. Caleb. My father. I pictured that house. The kitchen. The silence. The way they looked at me. Like I was nothing. Like I was disposable. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that burns hot and fast. This was different. Colder. Sharper. Controlled. The kind that waits. The kind that plans. They ever cross your mind? Marcus asked suddenly one night. I glanced up. Who? Whoever put you out here. I paused. Yeah, I said finally. Gonna do something about it? I met his gaze. For a second, I considered lying. Saying no. Saying it didn't matter. But instead, I told the truth. Not yet. He nodded slowly. Good, he said. Means you're thinking. That was the difference. I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't surviving. I was preparing. Every dollar I saved. Every skill I learned. Every mistake I avoided. It was all building toward something. Something bigger. Something inevitable. Because one thing had become painfully clear: they didn't just take my home. They didn't just take my money. They didn't just take my childhood. They made a mistake. A massive one. They let me go. And someday, I was going to make sure they regretted it. Not with words. Not with anger. But with something far more permanent. Something they couldn't ignore. Something they couldn't escape. I leaned back against the cold wall, closing my eyes for a moment. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I was going to take. By the time I turned 23, I no longer slept in storage rooms. I owned the building. Not the grocery store itself, at least not at first, but the property it stood on. The land. The lease. The thing that actually mattered. Marcus didn't believe me when I told him. "You're joking," he said, staring at the papers in my hand. "I'm not." He read them again, slower this time, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less absurd. "You bought the property?" "Through a holding company," I said. "Cleaner that way." He looked up at me, eyes narrowing. "Who the hell are you?" I almost smiled. Someone who paid attention. It hadn't happened overnight. Nothing I built ever did. After I left the store, I moved into a tiny apartment, worked 2 jobs, then 3, saved everything, invested carefully, learned aggressively. I didn't chase fast money. I studied systems, small businesses, supply chains, margins, debt. People underestimated how fragile most things were, especially things that looked stable. The first real break came when a supplier defaulted. A mid-sized distribution company, poor management, too much leverage, bad decisions stacked on worse ones. I saw it coming months before it happened. And I positioned myself. When they collapsed, I bought their leftover contracts for pennies. Everyone else saw scraps. I saw infrastructure. That one move changed everything. From there, it accelerated. Not explosively, not recklessly, precisely. I reinvested every gain, expanded slowly, built connections, learned who mattered and who didn't. And eventually, I built something real. A network, logistics, retail supply, quiet control over how goods moved through certain parts of the state. Nothing flashy, nothing public, but powerful. And then, one day, I saw a name I hadn't thought about in years. Caleb. Came up in a report. A small company, construction supply, growing too fast for its size, poor internal controls, high-risk expansion. The CEO? Caleb Whitmore. I stared at the screen for a long time. Whitmore. My father's last name. Still his. I leaned back in my chair, letting the information settle. "So," I murmured to myself, "you made something of yourself. Good. That made it better." I dug deeper. The company wasn't built from nothing. It had backing. Family money. Assets. The house. They had leveraged everything. Everything I had been pushed out of, turned into capital. Of course they had. Lillian was too calculated not to. And then I saw her name. Lillian Whitmore. Listed as a silent partner. I let out a slow breath. There it was. The full picture. "What's interesting?" my analyst, Jordan, asked, stepping into the office. I turned the screen toward him. "Take a look." He scanned it quickly. Mid-tier operation. Aggressive growth. Weak fundamentals. "Exactly. You thinking acquisition?" I shook my head slightly. "Something like that." He raised an eyebrow. "That usually means something else entirely." I didn't respond. For the first time in years, I felt it again. Not anger. Not pain. Something sharper. Focused. Purposeful. I started mapping everything. Their suppliers. Their debts. Their dependencies. Every contract, every weak point, every assumption they were making. And there were a lot of assumptions. They believed they were stable. They believed they were growing. They believed they were safe. They were wrong. Phase 1, I said quietly one evening, staring at the web of connections I had built on my screen. Jordan glanced over. You're talking to yourself again. Just thinking out loud. Dangerous habit. Only for other people. I started small. Indirect. I didn't touch them. Not yet. I touched the things they relied on. A supplier here. Contract there. Nothing obvious. Nothing traceable. Just pressure. Subtle shifts in pricing. Delays. Inconveniences. The kind that pile up over time. Something's off, Caleb said during a call I listened in on weeks later. His voice had changed. Older. Sharper. But I recognized it instantly. What do you mean? Someone asked. Shipments are late. Costs are creeping up. I don't like it. It's probably temporary. Nothing's temporary if you ignore it long enough, he snapped. I leaned back, listening. Good. He was paying attention. That made it more interesting. Weeks turned into months. The pressure increased. Gradually. Carefully. Never enough to trigger panic. Just enough to create cracks. Cash flow is tightening, Jordan noted during one of our reviews. Not yet, I replied. But it will. You're enjoying this, he said. I didn't deny it. Then came the first real hit. A major supplier, one of their key dependencies, pulled out. Officially, it was a strategic realignment. In reality, it was me. I listened to the fallout. You're telling me they just walked away? Caleb demanded over the phone. That's what I'm saying. Why? They got a better offer. From who? Silence. I smiled. That night, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in my office, looking out over the city. Lights stretched endlessly in every direction. Movement, control, power, everything I had built, piece by piece. From nothing, from less than nothing. And somewhere out there, they were starting to feel it. The shift, the instability, the slow, inevitable collapse. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the latest report. Debt increasing, margins shrinking, stress building. Perfect. Not yet, I whispered to myself, because this wasn't about destruction. Not yet. This was about positioning, setting the stage, making sure that when everything fell apart, fell exactly the way I wanted. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It isn't impulsive. It isn't a moment. It's a process, a system, a carefully constructed fall. And they had just taken their first step off the edge. They just didn't know it yet. The collapse didn't happen all at once. That would have been too easy, too kind. Instead, it unfolded exactly the way I designed it. Slow, visible, unavoidable. Cash reserves are almost gone. That was the first internal report I intercepted. Caleb's company was bleeding now. Not fatally, not yet, but enough to panic the wrong kind of people. Investors, partners, people who don't stay loyal when numbers start turning red. Secure emergency funding, Caleb ordered during a board call. His voice was tight, controlled. But I could hear it. The strain. We're already leveraged, someone replied. Any more debt, then find equity. At what valuation? Silence. Exactly. That's when I stepped in. Not as myself. Not yet. Through layers, proxies, shells. An investment firm they had never heard of. But one that suddenly showed interest. They're offering to buy in, one of his advisors said during the next call. Why? Caleb asked immediately. Growth potential. Market expansion. They see long-term upside. He didn't respond right away. Smart. He was suspicious. Good. What's the catch? He asked finally. There's always a catch, the advisor admitted. They want controlling interest. Absolutely not. Then we don't survive the next quarter. Silence again. Longer this time. He knew. He didn't have a choice. Set up the meeting, he said. The room was exactly how I expected. Glass walls. Clean lines. Expensive but trying too hard to look modest. Caleb sat across from me. Older now. Sharper. More polished. But I saw it instantly. The same smirk hiding beneath the surface. The same arrogance. He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. Why would he? I was just someone in a suit. Mr. Whitmore? I said calmly, extending my hand. He shook it. Firm. Confident. Appreciate you coming, he replied. His eyes flicked over me, assessing, judging, dismissing, just like before. We talked numbers, terms, conditions, all the usual things. He pushed back where he could, negotiated aggressively, tried to maintain control. It was almost impressive. Almost. You're asking for too much, he said at one point. I'm offering survival, I replied evenly. That's not the same thing. No, I said. It's better. He leaned back, studying me. Why us? There it was. The question. I held his gaze. Because I understand your business. He frowned slightly. And I know exactly how it ends without me. He signed. Of course he did. They always do. When the alternative is losing everything. Phase 2 began immediately. Control is a quiet thing. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. One decision at a time, it reshapes everything. We restructured operations, reassigned leadership, adjusted financial priorities. On paper, it looked like recovery. In reality, it was consolidation. Lillian showed up a week later. First time I had seen her in years. She hadn't changed much. Still composed, still sharp, still calculating. Her eyes landed on me during a meeting. Paused. Studied. For a second, I thought she might recognize something. But then, nothing. Just polite indifference. You're the one behind this? She asked later, approaching me privately. I represent the firm, I said. That's not what I asked. I met her gaze. What exactly are you asking? She held it for a moment longer, then smiled. Thin. Controlled. I'm asking if we should be worried. I almost laughed. Not if you cooperate. Weeks passed. Then the final move. Emergency board meeting, Jordan said, stepping into my office. They're ready. They don't know it yet. But yes. The room filled quickly. Caleb, Lillian, board members, advisors. Tension thick in the air. What's this about? Caleb asked as I took my seat at the head of the table. I didn't answer immediately. Just looked around the room. Let the silence settle. Then I spoke. Effective immediately, I said calmly. We are executing a full leadership transition. Confusion. What? Caleb snapped. You're being removed as CEO. The room exploded. You can't do that, he shot back. I can, I replied. And I just did. You don't have that authority. I own 51% of this company, I said, cutting him off. Check the filings. Silence. Shock. Realization. Lillian stepped forward, her composure cracking for the first time. Who are you? She demanded. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And then, I smiled. Funny, I said softly. You didn't ask that when you took my money. The room went still. Caleb frowned. What are you talking about? I leaned back slightly. Or when you threw me out. Recognition hit Lillian first. I saw it. That flicker. That moment when everything clicks into place. No, she whispered. Caleb looked between us. confused. What is she talking about? I met his eyes. Cold. Steady. You don't recognize me? I asked. He stared. Longer this time. Searching. And then, it hit him. Ethan, he said. My name sounded foreign in his mouth. Like something he wasn't allowed to say anymore. Yeah, I replied. It's me. The silence that followed was everything I had waited for. You, Caleb started, but couldn't finish. Lillian stepped back slightly, like distance could protect her. You planned this, she said. Every step. This is insane, Caleb snapped. You can't just. This is our company. No, I corrected calmly. It was. What do you want? He demanded. There it was. The question. The one they always ask. I stood slowly, walked around the table, each step deliberate, measured. When I stopped in front of them, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I want you to feel it, I said quietly. Feel what? Caleb shot back. I looked at Lillian, then at him. That moment, I continued, when everything you built, everything you trusted, everything you thought was yours, I let the words hang, is gone. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. You're firing us? Caleb asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. I'm erasing you. The legal team stepped in immediately after that. Documents. Signatures. Enforcement. Everything already in motion. Accounts frozen. Assets seized. Investigations triggered. Irregularities I had carefully documented, now weaponized. This isn't over, Caleb shouted as security moved in. I didn't respond. Lillian didn't shout. She just stared at me. Hatred. Pure. Undiluted. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I answered honestly. Yes. They were escorted out. Publicly. In front of everyone who mattered. Everything they built. Gone. Everything they were. Exposed. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what they thought. The headlines hit within hours. Executive shakeup. Financial misconduct under investigation. Whitmore leadership removed amid internal crisis. Clean. Professional. Polite. The kind of language that hides brutality behind polished words. But the reality? It wasn't clean. It wasn't polite. It was destruction. Their accounts were frozen first. Every line of credit cut. Every asset flagged. Everything they thought they owned suddenly belonged to someone else. Me. The investigations followed. Not fabricated. Not fake. Just exposed. Every shortcut Caleb had taken. Every risk Lillian had approved. Every corner they cut to grow faster, bigger, stronger. I hadn't created their downfall. I had simply removed the illusion holding it together. Within a week, their company was gone. Dismantled. Absorbed. Erased. I didn't attend the hearings. Didn't need to. I had people for that. Lawyers. Analysts. Clean hands. That was the difference between who I used to be and who I had become. But there was one thing left. One final piece. The house. I stood across the street, hands in my coat pockets, staring at it. Same structure. Same walls. Different weight. It looked smaller. Weaker. Like it had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. A for sale sign stood in the yard. I almost laughed. They had leveraged it. Lost it. Of course they had. You going in? Jordan's voice broke the silence beside me. I shook my head slightly. No, thought you might want to. I already have. He studied me for a second. Then nodded. Fair enough. The door opened. Lillian stepped out first. She looked different. Not weaker. Not broken, but stripped, like everything she built her identity on had been peeled away. Caleb followed, angrier, restless, pacing like a caged animal. They hadn't seen me yet. You should have fought harder, Caleb snapped. Oh, don't start, Lillian replied sharply. You're the one who signed. We didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Yeah? What would you have done? She didn't answer, because for once, she didn't have one. I stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, they both turned. Recognition was instant. You, Caleb said, his voice tightening. Lillian didn't speak. She just watched, carefully, like she was still trying to understand where she had lost control. You're here to gloat? Caleb asked. I stopped a few feet away. Close enough. Far enough. No, I said. Then what? I looked past them. At the house. At the windows. At the place that used to mean something. Closure, I replied. Caleb let out a bitter laugh. You think this is closure? I didn't look at him. I think this is balance. Silence. Lillian finally spoke. After everything, she said slowly, this is what you wanted? I turned to her. No, I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. This, I continued, gesturing lightly around us, is just what you earned. The words landed. Hard. Caleb stepped forward. Anger boiling over. You think you're better than us now? I met his gaze. No, I said calmly. I know I am. That did it. He lunged. Fast. Reckless. But security was already there. They stepped in before he could get close. Pulled him back. Get off me! He shouted, struggling. I didn't move. Didn't react. Didn't need to. Lillian didn't try to stop him. She just watched me. Still calculating. Still searching. Was it worth it? She asked again. I held her gaze. Longer this time. Then I stepped closer. Just enough that only she could hear what I said next. You told me once, I murmured, that I wasn't your son. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did. Just slightly. You were right. I straightened. Because a son might have forgiven you. A pause. I didn't. Silence. Deep. Final. I turned away. No hesitation. No second glance. Behind me, Caleb was still shouting. Still fighting. Still losing. Lillian said nothing. And that was the real ending. Not the collapse. Not the exposure. Not even the revenge. It was the silence. The kind that settles in after everything is gone. After every illusion is stripped away. After there's nothing left to fight for. That's where I left them. Not ruined. Not destroyed. Just empty. And me? I kept walking. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't give you your past back. It just makes sure no one else gets to rewrite it. So tell me, if you were in my place, standing there watching the people who broke you lose everything, would you have stopped? Or would you have gone even further? If the story hit you the way it was meant to, don't just watch in silence. Like the video, share it with someone who understands. And subscribe to Savage Revenge. Because sometimes, justice doesn't whisper. It hits back. Hard.